There's a kind of knowing that only comes from being somewhere your mind hasn't rehearsed. I thought I knew what to expect. The distance, the heat, the hills. But the journey didn't start with the first pedal stroke. It began with the realization that I had no idea what to expect. This is unfamiliar ground, not just the terrain, but the pace of life, the language, the silences between conversations, the way the sun moves across the sky. Out here, you can't rely on what you know. You have to listen, to the land, to the people, to each other. Because the lessons that matter most aren't the ones you plan for, they're the ones that find you. These are the unknown unknowns, and this is how we find them. So far, pretty good first impression. Turns out I didn't need a visa for my Hong Kong passport. I didn't know that. They didn't even try to scam me for that. That was really great. It's getting late now and we have an early start tomorrow morning. So we're gonna grab something to eat and then come back and rest. The Jordan Trail stretches 730 kilometers across the spine of the country, from Kais in the north to Aqaba in the south. It threads through 52 towns and villages, across mountains and desert, past castles, canyons, and ancient ruins. With limited experience on a mountain bike and a vague sense of adventure, we were to ride part of it, enough to feel the dust under our wheels, enough to experience Jordan slowly, with our bodies as the engine. We started at Dana Biosphere Reserve, perched high above a valley of ancient rock and pale light. I stood there at the edge, scanning the horizon. Below, the land fell away into folds of desert. I was itching to get going. The first stretch followed the historic King's Highway, and to my surprise, it felt manageable. I was nervous at first, trying to get used to the geometry of the frame, the way the bike responded. But I quickly realized I had been overthinking it. The road was smooth, the cars gave us space, and the pace was manageable. I didn't get dropped. We paused now and then for snacks and sips of water, moments to take in the silence. Then the sun began to rise higher in the sky, and with it, the weight of the heat. By the time we stopped for lunch with a local Bedouin family, I was dehydrated and dazed, sipping hot tea in hot air, unable to eat much. Everything in me just wanted a cool breeze. First 24k done, stopping for lunch. Feeling good. But we pushed on. The road curved through wide, rocky hills. The scenery was cinematic. Castles in the distance, dry riverbeds, villages tucked into folds of stone. Then came our first big descent, followed by a steep climb, and somehow I made it. No walking, no stopping. That climb gave me a burst of pride, and for the first time I thought, maybe I can do this. Then we left the pavement. At first the off-road trail didn't seem that different, just rougher, looser. I was cruising over the ups and flying down the downs, letting the bike bounce beneath me. And then a patch of gravel, a sudden break, and I was on the ground.
You okay?
Yep. Oh.
This became a mountain biking crash course, like literally. I got back on the bike, shaken, sore, and a little embarrassed. I didn't want to admit how far out of depth I felt, but I kept going, hoping that somewhere down the line the terrain would start to make more sense. By the time we reached camp, the light had softened. The campsite was perched above Wadi Rum, with a view so fast it almost felt unreal. I rode in too fast, braked instinctively, and I fell again.
Yep.
A few abrasions, a bruised thigh, and a bruised ego to match. I remembered something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, a graph of confidence against competence. In the beginning, when you know very little, your confidence is absurdly high. That spike, it's called Mount Stupid, and the fall that follows, that's when reality sets in. That's where I was, all confidence, no skill. Turns out mountain biking isn't something you can just muscle through. It's not about grinding or pacing, it's timing, technique, listening to the land, not overpowering it. Another reminder, I still have a lot to learn. That night, we were completely off-grid. No signal, no maps, no apps to tell me what time sunrise would be or what stars we were sleeping under. And yet, something about the absence felt right. I was just here, dusty, scraped, and humbled. And maybe, at the bottom of Mount Stupid, that's where real learning begins. I'm not usually a breakfast person, but this morning I thought about one of my consultants, always preaching about wound healing, how the body needs to be in an anabolic state. After yesterday's tumble, that felt like a good enough reason to finish my breakfast. We retraced our steps up the same steep gravel slope where I'd fallen. The rocks still looked unforgiving. My legs felt fine, but my confidence hadn't bounced back overnight. Getting back on the bike wasn't just physical, it took everything in me to silence the doubt. I've seen firsthand how bad a pelvic fracture from mountain biking can be, but I also knew I didn't want fear to be the last word, so I climbed back onto the saddle, wobbly, hesitant, but moving. There were still parts of the trail I couldn't bring myself to ride. My tires would slip, my grip would tighten, panic would rise. Slowing down didn't help, so I hopped off, handed my bike to the support truck and ran the section instead. I just wanted to keep going. When we hit the road again, everything shifted. The tarmac felt smooth, predictable in a way gravel never could be. We started a 6-kilometer climb, and I leaned into the effort. There's something deeply satisfying about climbing. You work and you rise. The rhythm clears your mind. I didn't feel tired, just focused, like I was carving my way up the mountain with breath and willpower. The descent, though, was another story. Ever since a crash a few years ago, speeding, a bump, and losing control, I've been nervous on downhills. Every jolt felt like a start of a fall. Every bend reminds me how fast things can go wrong. Like I said, it's always been a confidence issue. But even with my speed low, I felt the wind in my face, the movement beneath me, the thrill just beneath the fear, and slowly I started to enjoy it again. By the time we reached the valley floor, the light had softened, the air felt different. My hands were sore from gripping the bricks, but my heart was lighter. The road flattened out, and the landscape began to shift. Strange, rounded boulders rose from the desert. They looked almost otherworldly, as if they'd grown out of the earth. We left the bikes and continued on foot through the sandstone corridors of Little Petra.
So Little Petra is a local name. The locals called it Little Petra because it's a smaller version of Petra, or a small site.
Unlike its famous sibling, Little Petra felt quiet, almost secretive, less polished, more lived in. We wandered through facades carved into the cliffs, the edges softened by centuries of sun and sand. I ran my hand along the walls, imagining traders passing through long ago, camel caravans, families resting in the shades, meals shared under these same overhangs. Most of our cycling was done before lunch. The sun, already blazing by mid-morning, made it clear why life slows down here with the heat. We found a sliver of shade and shared a simple but delicious picnic. From there, it was a short row into our glamping site for the night. I'm used to roughing it, tents in the rain, days without a proper wash. But in this heat, comfort doesn't feel like luxury, it feels like survival. We were all craving a shower, a moment to reset. Once we were clean and dry, we gathered in the communal space. Someone brought out a card game, and soon we were laughing, teasing, the kind of playfulness that only comes after a shared struggle.
Oh, that was quick.
There's something about sunsets in the desert. They don't just color the sky, they change everything. The light stretches, softens. The sand begins to glow, like it's holding onto the last warmth of the day.
That's so funny. Well, fish too, huh?
When people say they're visiting Jordan, most really mean Petra, or more specifically, that one iconic image, the treasury, carved into the rock, framed by towering canyon walls, lit by that golden glow that feels almost unreal. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world, a postcard, a bucket list item, a place that lives more in imagination than reality. To be honest, that was all I knew before coming here too, and today we were finally going there. Not through the main tourist gate, but via the backdoor route, through the mountains and on our own 2 feet. Petra was once the thriving capital of the Nabatean kingdom, carved into rose-red cliffs over 2,000 years ago. A center of trade, power, and innovation, connected to empires across Arabia and beyond. Then over time it faded, hidden by sand and time, until rediscovered in the 19th century. But Petra was never truly lost, not to the Bedouin communities who've always known these trails, moving through them long before the tourists came and long after they leave. We started our walk just after sunrise, back on my own 2 feet, where I usually feel most at home. The trail climbed and dipped through wind-carved sandstone, revealing ancient steps. It felt like the landscape was slowly letting us in, layer by layer, secret by secret. After hours under the sun, we reached our first stop, the monastery. Less famous than the treasury, but much bigger, carved into the mountainside. Once a temple or tomb, later used as a Christian monastery, which is how it got its name. I'd seen photos, that massive doorway, the columns weathered by centuries of wind and sun, but nothing prepares you for standing in front of it. Eventually, we peeled ourselves away. There was still a long descent ahead, from the monastery, through Petra's hut, all the way to the treasury. The steps felt endless. No breeze, no shade, just heat radiating off the rocks. I missed the bike. Not the effort, but the wind. That subtle relief you get even when climbing. Out here, walking in the open, the sun beating down, there was no escape. People talk about the magic of Petra, but rarely about how physically draining it is, especially if you hike through it in the middle of the day. By the time we reached the treasury, I was completely spent. This was the image we all carried before coming, the ground facade tucked between the cliffs. But honestly, I was too heat-struck to fully take it in. It's strange, I came all this way for that view, but what I remember most is how the journey felt. Before this trip, I didn't know much about the history of this region, but walking and riding through these landscapes, hearing stories from guides and locals, I'm starting to form a picture. Still patchy, still incomplete, but it's no longer a blank space. Now I know where the questions live. What I don't know has shape. I still don't know much, but I'm starting to know what I don't know. By the time we reached the van at the end of the trail, it felt like a lifeline. Just enough time to cool down and gather ourselves. Not for the end of the day, but for the next stretch. Because we still had to get back on the bikes.
It's raining.
And then, just as we changed into our cycling gear, it started to rain in Jordan of all places, right after we'd baked under the desert sun all day. If this trip has taught me anything, it's to stop expecting things to go as imagined. And maybe that's the point. As we continued south, the landscape shifted. The hills flattened into open desert. The ground turned softer, sandier, more unstable beneath our tires. This was textbook desert. We cycled over cracked mud flats where the earth felt hollow. I started to feel a bit more at ease, picking up small lessons along the way. Someone shared a piece of advice that stuck. Pedal while braking. It sounded so counterintuitive. On the road bike, that's wasted effort. But here, it created tension, and with it, balance. Instead of fighting the terrain, I started to move with it. Speed didn't mean power out here, and control didn't come with holding back. It came from learning a new rhythm, one that made space for both momentum and resistance at once. As we cycled deeper into the desert, the silence stretched as we approached our wild campsite, a small patch of earth hosted by a local Bedouin family. The Bedouins have lived with the desert for generations. The sense of hospitality runs deep. Even in the most remote places, they make you feel at home. That night, they cooked a warm, traditional meal for us. We sat on patterned rugs under the rain. I found myself rethinking something as simple as rice. I always thought I hated it, probably because I only knew it plain, steamed, forgettable. But this was different, spiced, textured, infused with flavor and care. Maybe I didn't hate rice, maybe I just hadn't had it like this before. Fourth day of cycling today. 60k today. It's gonna be a long ride through the desert, sandy terrain. Excited for it. The landscape yesterday was pretty vast. I love it. Today was the longest ride of the trip, 60 kilometers. On paper, that's nothing on a road bike. But off-road, in the desert, distance isn't the enemy, it's the terrain. We started the day paddling deeper into sand. Soft, dry, unpredictable. The kind of sand that makes your tires feel like they're floating, not slipping, not quite moving forward, just drifting. Every instinct told me to brake, to slow down, to try and stay upright. But that's not how sand works. To stay in control, you have to do the opposite. Don't brake, accelerate, trust the bike, trust yourself. It goes against everything your body wants to do, but it's the only way forward. I'm still figuring it out, still getting the hang of it, but every time I make it through a patch I thought I couldn't, I learn a little more. Eventually the road turned to washboard. Deep ripples edged into that like punishment for every kilometer ridden. My wrists ached, my hips took the brunt of every bump. Even my glasses were bouncing on the edge of my nose, flailing with every jolt. I knew Wadi Rum's epic landscapes were just ahead, but truthfully, I couldn't see a thing. The dust, the blur, the constant shaking, it felt like I was riding blind. And that forced me to trust the bike even more, to trust the caravan track I was following. It was another lesson in surrender, in just moving forward. Thinking back, the Dunning-Kruger effect came to life on this ride. At first I was overconfident, as evidenced by my crashes. But the terrain quickly humbled me. There's a strange kind of learning that comes when you're shaken like that. You stop assuming and start listening, to your body, to the ground beneath your wheels. I began to slow down, and slowly I found balance, not just physically, but mentally too. I stopped fighting the terrain and started flowing with it. I'm not claiming mastery, but there's a quiet kind of confidence settling in, just the kind that comes from falling, getting up, and choosing to keep paddling. The mudflats were probably my favorite landscape of this trip. Unlike the sand and rocky descents, they didn't feel as dangerous, and that meant I could finally relax and take it all in. There were no tracks, no other travelers, just open plain stretching to the horizon, with only us moving across it. It felt otherworldly, like riding through the floor of a dried-up ocean on another planet. The silence, the skill, the soft crunch beneath our tires. For once, I wasn't fighting the terrain, I was just part of it. Later, back on the desert highway, climbing steadily through Wadi Rum, the sun grew harsher, relentless and dry, but my love of climbing only deepened. There's something grounding about the rhythm of breath and pedal. Even in the heat, I felt strong. After everything, this stretch felt like redemption. Strangely, 60 kilometers didn't feel long enough. I wanted more. We spent the afternoon exploring Wadi Rum by jeep. I'd seen photos, heard that films were shot here, but nothing prepares you for the scale. Towering sandstone mountains arise abruptly from the desert floor, casting long shadows across endless red sand. It felt like stepping into another planet. We climbed rock arches, scrambled up viewpoints, and ran down dunes like kids. The silence out here feels almost sacred, broken only by footsteps or desert wind.
They must have only just
No sugar.
As the sun dipped and the sky turned gold, we returned to camp for dinner. That night we had saab, a traditional Bedouin meal slow-cooked in an underground oven. When they lifted the lid and pulled trays from the sand, the scent of roasted meat and spices filled the air. Lamb, vegetables, rice, everything was smoky, rich, and deeply comforting. We ate under the stars, surrounded by sandstone and silence, letting the warmth of the meal and the moment sink in. We woke early for a camel ride through Wadi Rum, just as the stars were beginning to fade and the desert still held onto the night's chill. I've ridden camels before, but this time it felt different. In Bedouin culture, camels are more than just transport. Known as the ships of the desert, they've been trusted companions for centuries, carrying families, water, firewood, even entire tents across vast, unforgiving landscapes. They're not just animals, but symbols of endurance, resilience, and freedom, deeply respected, woven in tradition. As we swayed through the stillness, the horizon shifted, from deep blue to soft lavender, then to blush pink and warm peach. The desert lit up slowly, mountain by mountain, until the whole landscape glowed. It wasn't a dramatic sunrise, but it was one of the most beautiful I've seen. Quiet, delicate, powerful in its own way.
We need to cross and the main road.
Anyone?
Just like that. Just like that.
It was our final day on the bike. A jeep took us out of camp, and from there we set off once again. This time across the vast desert mudflats surrounding Wadi Rum. The landscape felt endless, surreal in every direction. The ride was fast and smooth, almost effortless compared to the sand and rocks we'd battled over the past few days. For the first time, I wasn't fighting the bike. I wasn't bracing for impact, scanning for obstacles, or second-guessing my line. The tires hummed gently over the earth, and I could finally just ride. The wind slipped past my ears, the sun stretched long shadows behind us, and I felt weightless. Not in body, but in mind. No tension, no urgency, just a quiet rhythm between breath and movement. I was starting to get the hang of cycling through sand too. What used to stop me, patches of softness I dread, had started to feel more familiar. My instincts had shifted. I no longer panicked when the tires began to float or slip. I let go of the brakes, I leaned into the uncertainty. I trusted the bike. And little by little, the fear gave way to flow. The kilometers slipped by too quickly, just as the terrain softened and my confidence deepened, just as my body stopped resisting and started moving with the desert. The journey ended. It was bittersweet, like waking from a dream or reaching the final page of a book you didn't want to close. I wasn't ready to stop paddling.
Well done, man.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Well done.
Boom.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Cheers, man. Cheers. Cheers, everyone.
We closed the day in Aqaba, by the Red Sea. It felt surreal, waking in the stillness of the desert, and just hours later, floating weightless above coral reefs in crystal clear water. Slowing down took some adjusting, but as the sun dipped low over the water and the salt dried on my skin, I realized this too was part of the journey, learning to be present, in motion or at rest. I spent the rest of my time in Jordan unwinding, letting the dust settle, both literally and mentally. We visited the Dead Sea first. After days of grit, sun and sweat, the sensation of floating in that thick, mineral-rich water felt almost surreal. The buoyancy was unlike anything I've experienced. After that, we headed to Amman, Jordan's capital, buzzing and alive. The city was a complete change of pace. I wandered through the old souks and Roman ruins, let the scent of cardamom and coffee pull me into hidden cafes. In the stillness that followed, I started facing a truth I've avoided for a long time. I've been the biggest obstacle in my own way. Not the terrain, not the fear, just me, believing I didn't deserve the things I wanted and unconsciously pushing them away. But something shifted out here. Maybe it was the desert, stripping things back to what matters. Or the bike, teaching me that progress doesn't come from control, but from trust. Whatever it was, I feel something changing. Despite the cultural gaps, the unfamiliar places, I'm starting to find my own voice. There's power in admitting what you don't know, meeting the unknown unknowns, and choosing to keep going anyway. That's the real journey, I think. And maybe, finally, I'm ready to stop getting in my own way.